Well, the situation was really terrible. The survivors were exhausted. They were heavily traumatized. Some of them could not talk at all. It was very difficult to obtain any kind of testimonies. Just a lot of grief, a lot of desperation from mothers who had seen their children drown, from children who had seen their siblings drown in front of their eyes. Very few of the children survived, only 13. Very few of the women survived, around 20 of them. And what we know from other survivors is that there were many, many family units, including many people fleeing from war, fleeing from Syria, and fleeing from persecution from Eritrea and other countries.
And of course, the spotlight is shining on Palermo tonight because of this tragedy, but it's a place that's become quite used, hasn't it, to waves of migrants coming across like this?
Yes, I mean, the figures are just simply horrific. There is 2,300 people that we estimate have gone missing or died in the Mediterranean this year alone. And just by way of comparison, last year for the same period, it was 1,700. Now, last year was already the deadliest year, so, you know, this year there is an incredible increase. And this is the real crisis which is happening in Europe, is definitely people drowning in the Mediterranean in order to seek protection.
And we've heard the mayor there describing the situation as a genocide caused by European selfishness. Would UNHCR agree with that?
Well, what is beyond doubt is the fact that people that are fleeing from war and persecution should not have to put their lives in the hands of smugglers in order to reach safety. And that's why UNHCR has been appealing to European states to provide alternatives for people that are fleeing from war so that they can enter Europe safely.
Such as, because it's a very difficult balancing act for European governments, because they say they don't want to encourage migrants, economic migrants, to come across. So how do they get the balance right? What should they be doing?
Well, okay, so let's talk about the facts. The main nationality of people arriving by sea in the Mediterranean right now is Syrians, followed by Eritreans and people from Afghanistan, who possibly are also refugees. So really there needs to be a shift in policy from border control to thinking that this is a refugee crisis in the Mediterranean, and that it is not about pull factors, but it is about sheer desperation of people that have no other way. I mean, of course, no mother wants to risk her children's lives on an overcrowded boat, on a fishing boat with 600 people. Nobody would do that if they were not leaving behind something which is far worse.
And what about the rescue operation itself? Because we know that Europe has poured more resources into that, but what we saw yesterday was that horrific situation with possibly hundreds of lives lost. Are there enough resources?
Well, of course, yes. I mean, this episode demonstrates that, even though there is a rescue operation, and even though the rescue vessels had actually reached, a few miles off of north of Libya, the boat that was in distress, the problem is that, the smugglers are filling the boats beyond capacity. I mean, as I said, it's a fishing boat with 600 people, of which hundreds are trapped in the hull of the boat and never even had a chance to get out while it was sinking. The conditions are horrific, and even with the best search and rescue operations, it's just, they are literally accidents waiting to happen. This is why what's really going to prevent deaths is to provide people with alternatives.
Really awful situation. Barbara Molinari, we really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us tonight. Thank you.